Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service and jbiztechvalley.com.
Well, Rabbi Simon, I got to tell you that I just spent all day today running around the Capitol with a group called Agudath Israel of America, and they just had their lobby day, their mission to Albany. And so we have two of those fervent lobbyists, advocacy groups with us today. Over here we have Leon Goldenberg, who owns Goldman Realty Corp. And Goldmont Realty Corp. And you're also...
I'm on the Board of Trustees.
You're on the Board of Trustees of Agudath Israel.
Of Agudath Israel of America. I'm also the treasurer of Agudath Israel Community Service Board, which is the arm that does a lot of our teaching. I run COPE Institute, which is a...
political PAC?
No. COPE Institute is a training school.
Oh.
Yeah, the vocational school.
Vocational school.
Oh, well, COPE means something else. Okay.
Right. What we do is we run a course, a 3.5-month course, which is called the Junior Accounting course, which makes you eligible for 21 credits. And then we graduate about 200 men and women separately, but we do graduate over 200 a year. And then we take out the best, and we run about 60 to 70 men and women, again separately, for another 19 months. And when they're finished in those 19 months, they have a bachelor degree, and they are prepared to sit for the CPA. And in the last 5 years that we've been running it, we have about 100 members that are now CPAs, and close to 200 others that are have taken part of the CPA course.
Do you have to be an observant Jew in order to do this?
No. But we do work around the Jewish calendar.
Right.
So therefore, our classes, run on the 19-month, they run on nights because people are working, right? Because they graduate Sundays, legal holidays.
Right.
So we actually had the Department of Education call us that they said, there's no way on July 4th we are running classes. So they're going to send somebody down from here, from Albany down to New York, and check in on our class. So on July 4th came and went, nobody showed up. So we asked what happened. He says, well, I'll tell you the truth. We couldn't get anybody to go down on July 4th. Yeah. So we'll assume that you are running the classes, but we do run them. So therefore, anybody who's eligible to come in and take the course, but at the end of the day, it's probably 75% Hasidic men who would not go to regular colleges, not even Touro, they're not comfortable because of their poor language skills. But there are really some very, very bright young men and young women. The women, of course, have much better language skills.
What's the cost of all this?
The total cost is about $27,000, which is, pretty reasonable.
Well, you make that back the first year.
Well, they'll make it back the first year. We have, sometimes we have subsidies under junior accounting, where the program is very inexpensive. But at the end of the day, we're graduating people, we're taking them, many of them. We had somebody speak recently at a breakfast for us. He was on, all the programs, Section 8, and housing and this and that, and now has a job, and he's off the programs.
Mark, I'd like to say that this is important to put in a frame this situation because there's a lot of charity going on in New York, a lot of beautiful charity organizations. People need money for the Sabbath or for the holidays, which are very expensive. But the Maimonides says that the biggest charity you can do is to give someone a job.
Right.
Teach them a
trade.
trade.
It sounds like, okay, nice organization doing nice work, but really when it comes to charity, really, this is the biggest charity you can have. A person that's not on welfare anymore, now you can look himself in the face and saying, hey, now I have a job.
It's the old expression, don't give me a loaf of bread, show me how to bake a loaf of bread.
Right.
All right, so that's, it's a very important part of
it. And then to your left is Chaskel Bennett, who's the founder and CEO of MBA Janitorial Supply Company.
Pleasure.
And it's welcome. Bennett doesn't sound like a Jewish name. It sounds Irish to me.
Well, you'll have to take that up
Do you have Irish,
with my grandfather.
You have Irish roots?
I'm sure the name was changed at Ellis Island.
Okay.
Just as a point of information, almost no names were changed at Ellis Island. Oh. They took the documents that you came with from, most people came from Hamburg, And whatever it said on your documents in Hamburg, that was the name that you got here. Where names were changed were in Europe because they, people were coming from Russia, from Hungary, from Poland, and they were going through Germany. And so they many times never had papers when they asked them their name. Yeah. So either they spelled it differently or the boarding people over there in Hamburg didn't get the name straight.
Or when they're going through Ellis Island, he would say Sem Ting.
Yeah.
So Sam Ting is now.
Yeah, but it really was changed there. Once in a while, there might have been a mess up here, but they actually took. And my family, I have some people that just retired recently, they actually found my parents' boarding pass, and they actually found my grandfather came to America in 1907, was turned back, depending on who you speak to, my mother or my aunt. My mother said he had a very, very bad cold, and they suspected typhus and wouldn't let him in. And my aunt says that the person that vouched for him was supposed to pick him up and didn't. But either way, he went back. But we found it, and you see the boarding pass. The name is spelled the way it was spelled. The names weren't changed here. They took the manifest, and that was your.
I didn't know that.
That
it's
was
a
your
very
name.
Interesting American history.
Right.
You always say Ellis Island. People always say that.
Because it
people
sounds
change
right,
it.
but the fact is that the changes were made mostly in Europe.
Interesting.
So I just wanted to finish up with Chaskel. You have you're also on the board of Agudath Israel.
For quite a while, I was the youngest member of the Board of Trustees. I used to use that as a badge of honor. But as I got a little bit older, I became a grandfather recently. There are now one or two younger members. I can't use that anymore. But yes, I'm privileged to be on the board of Agudath Israel of America.
You're in your 20s?
No, but thank you.
How old are you?
I'm going to be 43 next month.
And your grandfather?
Start young in our family.
Well, mazel tov. Okay. Well, welcome to the show. I was in some of the meetings with you with the Senate Majority Conference, and also, you met with the governor's people, his staff people. I heard that there was just a lot of listening going on, and there wasn't a whole lot of commitment, and there was, except when we had our little luncheon, you had assembly members saying, "I will oppose this, I will favor this, whatever you need in your agenda, I will do for you." Are you comfortable coming out of your day-long mission that you're going to succeed at the end of the legislative session or the budget season?
At the end of the day, it's an ongoing process. I mean, the issues that we came about, and actually the governor's executive secretary mentioned it, that we come every year, we have a laundry list, and sometimes we chip away something here and there. And there are issues, of course, the top agenda issue is the tax credit, educational tax credit that we're working on. But it's been passed by the Senate for the last 4 or 5 years, if not more. So sometimes it's an ongoing process until you finally win.
Now it's interesting that the former speaker, Shelley Silver, probably would have supported the education tax credit, but I guess maybe his conference didn't.
His conference, it's unusual, but his conference actually did support it.
So why didn't Shelley support it?
It's not a question of Shelley supporting it. The question is the conference has tremendous backing from the unions. And many of the unions, especially the teachers union in New York State, New York City, see any dollar going to education but not going to the public schools as a dollar that would have gone to the public schools, which in reality that's not so.
Right, but there was someone who said today that if all the students who went to private school, yeshivas and Catholic schools also, parochial schools, if they went to public schools,
bankrupt the state.
It would bankrupt the state.
It would bankrupt the state. There's no question.
And New York State United Teachers and UFT, United Federation of Teachers, they just don't get it, right?
Well, no, they do get it. Because if suddenly there are almost 500,000 kids in non-public schools in New York State, about 140,000 are in yeshivas.
Or parochial schools.
No, just yeshivas.
140,000.
Right. So we're actually about 30% of the non-public school population in New York, and growing. We're growing at 4,000 children a year. So we're growing.
That's incredible.
The Catholic schools are going down. In New York City,
unfortunately, struggling.
they're struggling because they're closing.
Because of money you're talking
Because of
about,
money.
or just-
This past year in Buffalo, the Archdiocese closed 16 schools. And there was a calculation, they made a calculation of that out of, I think it was 38 or 3,900 students that were in those schools, they assumed that somewhere between 2,500, maybe 3,000 will end up in public schools. The others were near other Catholic schools, and they would be able to transfer them. But that will cost the city of Buffalo and the state upwards of $40 to $50 million.
And in all the capital district here, the Archdiocese closed several Catholic schools also.
Right.
Leon made the case
That-
very, very compellingly today that those students, on an average, it cost the state approximately $20,000
State and local.
So when you say
to educate
those
a public
students-
school child.
any
Oh,
public
okay.
school.
And if you take the 2,000 students
yes,
that Leon just mentioned, who are no longer going to Catholic schools in the Buffalo area, and they're being absorbed by the public school, understand that those 2,000 students at a $20,000 price, approximately $20,000 price tag per child, compound that by 2,000 students, you're talking about an extraordinary
$40 million.
additional burden of $40 million on the state and on the city of Buffalo. Now, those dollars could have been, it didn't have to be at that level. It could have been much less. Had the state and the city invested in those Catholic schools and helped them to remain open, as the diocese has been making their case, along with us and our yeshivas, then maybe, possibly, not all of those schools would have had to close. And that's the case that the Archdiocese is making compellingly, and that's why the Cardinal, it's not just the Orthodox Jewish community standing up for the education tax credit. Cardinal Dolan and the Catholic Conference have been extraordinarily vocal.
And close to us.
And we're working together with them, of
and
course.
at the luncheon, you had someone from the
Right.
Catholic
Sure,
We had
Conference.
two
Coach Rara
people.
is
Yeah.
the lobbyist officially for the Catholic Conference, and
Right.
we work hand in
So
hand with
there
them.
it was, right there.
You have to realize, as far as the union is concerned, if 2,000 children came in, that means there's employment for another 100 teachers. So that's the way the union looks at it.
So that's the way the union looks at it.
So what would be so explain to the audience clearly what's the education tax credit? What would that alleviate the burden?
Well, first off, the number has been whittled down and whittled down and whittled
Well,
down.
what is
Now
it
it's
now?
$100 million that the government proposed. The Senate passed a much higher bill, but let's use $100 million. So first off, $50 million is set aside in his budget, although we're going to try to adjust that, but it's set aside for the public school population. So if you have your local public school and they want to have a sports club, which they can't afford right now, you can actually get people to donate money. I'll explain how it works, but you can get people to donate to your local public school. This is not something that's just going, it's being viewed as just going to yeshivas, just as a voucher. The amount is small. $50 million on 500,000 students is not a lot of money per student, but the way it works is if I have a tax bill with the state of $1,000, I can give, instead of giving the state, I give it to a scholarship fund, not to my school. I give it to a scholarship fund, and I will get a credit, which I use now on my state taxes for $1,000, and it's capped at $1,000. So another misnomer, the rich people are going to, it's capped at $1,000, okay? The rich people are paying $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 to the state, and they're capped at $1,000. It's not making that much of a difference to the rich people. The middle income might benefit from it, but at the end of the day, it goes to the scholarship fund. The scholarship fund then works with, depending on how large their fund is, how many schools they do, they'll say, we're going to give it to this child to see that he gets into school, and this child and that child. It's not a panacea. It's not something that suddenly you get the tax credit, now yeshiva tuition goes away. It will only slow down the increases in tuition. It won't even stop the increase in tuition.
Chaskel, you wanted to say something?
There is a vocal opposition to private schools, parochial schools, as Leon mentioned, by the unions, United Federation of Teachers, who are extraordinary advocates for the things that they believe are important in public education. But as taxpayers and as contributors to the state of New York and the city of New York that we live in, we believe that in fairness and in equity, The state should do something to alleviate this burden. There's an enormous contribution made by giving our children a private school education. Fine. The tax credit proponents, those who are pushing forward this bill, understand the opposition. And so when this bill was designed and pushed forward by the Catholic Conference and by the Orthodox community and by others in the private school community, we understood the opposition. So instead of anybody alleging that this is a voucher program, as you probably could read in a lot of editorials, they said, no, we're going to split this 50-50. 50% of every tax dollar that will come into this program will go to the private school community, 50% to the public school community. That's fair, that's equitable, and we're talking about increasing and allowing people to invest in education, where in the past, maybe they wouldn't have sent their tax dollars to education.
A local.
They would have sent it to a food pantry, they would have sent
Or
it to
not
somewhere
sent it at
else.
all.
Or not sent it at all. Here's an opportunity to encourage investment in education, both private and public. And yet, the public school opposition is vehement against this plan.
Has the parochial and public school people actually sat down at the same table together and spoken about this at any point?
There have not been any real conversations.
I mean, isn't that how
from
you
our side, we have no issue meeting with anybody. We
right,
really
but
don't.
isn't that how you, I mean, we invited the New York State United Teachers to be on this program, and they said, no, this is not the forum that they wanted. Like, they thought we were going to attack them or
Right.
something. And that's not the premise of this program.
Right.
But they didn't want to hear from it. So, all right, I dropped it. I didn't push it. But, you know, they said this is not the forum for our president of the union to be part of. Now, I just wanted them to come on and just explain themselves, plus all their other issues, like I have you doing and everyone else doing. Just explain your point of view and your side of it. I mean, you know.
The difference is that they feel that this is a biased audience because you're targeting more of a Jewish audience, although we believe in public education. We support public education. We think it's critical to have a community that is educated, that eventually can go to college, that can get better jobs, because that's good for everybody.
Isn't it a shame the person who told me was Jewish, you know, who told me from NYSA that he was Jewish?
Right.
I was like,
Leon's point is an important point. Leon's point is an important point. You will never hear activists or advocates for religious education attack the teachers' union for wanting to promote their education dollars. We have no problem with that at all.
Someone's got to have both sides.
It's unfortunate, though. It's unfortunate, though, that children in New York State are not treated equally in this arena.
Right. Taxpayers, if the non-public schools were to close, would be stuck with two bills, one for $10 billion, $20,000, that's what it costs statewide, to educate these children. But let me give you something more important. Where do you put 500,000 kids? Right. You can't just, in other words, the $20,000 is only operating funds. You can't take 500,000 kids and, you know, stick them into the public schools that already exist. You now have to build for them.
You know, Mark, I'd like to put in a word from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he actually addressed this issue at a Farbrengen at a public address, and he said it just isn't fair for people to pay twice. They're paying real estate taxes, their property taxes, and obviously it goes to the public schools, it's got to be supported from someone, and it's the regular citizen to make a difference. If you're a senior citizen or if you have 10 kids in the public school, you're going to pay for the public property. And says, and then you pay for public school, and then they turn around, obviously, and the private schools and the Jewish schools need money, obviously, and you have to pay tuition. So therefore, that's you're being taxed twice. It really isn't fair. So he came out publicly for this idea.
Right.
The argument will be made by the other side is that, hey, public education is available to you. And the argument that we will make is we are not asking for a handout. We're not asking for a favor. The Governor Cuomo, when he came to campaign in Borough Park and in Brooklyn, was on public record as explaining that this is not a favor. This is a matter of justice.
It's not charity.
It's not charity. It's a matter of justice. It's a matter of children in New York City and New York State who go to private school are still children of the state. And so the state does have a certain responsibility to do what it can to assist the private school community. a heroic community, I might add, that will do anything and everything they can and make sure that their children get a Jewish education or a Catholic
But you know, one of the,
education.
well, I want to say the point is just, you know, we keep on saying Jewish education. Half the time, they're learning the same math. I mean, my children go here in
We
Albany.
made that
my
compelling argument all the time.
They're taking the same math, the same science. It's like Jewish. Well, you know, the state really doesn't have to pay for Jewish. They don't have to learn the Bible and the Talmudic ideas. They don't have to pay for that. That's on the Jewish community. But they're paying for the math and the science, so they should at least pay for half of the tuition
And one more
costs.
thing that I think is important, there's a lot always being said that it's a church-state issue. It is not. There are 14 states that have the EITC. 39 states have what's called the Blaine Amendment, which was actually an anti-Catholic amendment to see that education dollars would not go to the Catholic schools because the Jews were very small as far as yeshivas are concerned, which personally I happen to think is probably today would be declared unconstitutional. But I'm not an attorney, certainly not a constitutional attorney, but the fact is that there are states that have Blaine amendments, that have the ITC, so it is not a church-state issue whatsoever. Giving a scholarship, you know, setting it up the way it is, that is not an issue, and that's something that's also raised many times. But supporting education, we get CAP, we get mandated services, we do get funding from the state. So there is the right to get.
So I wanted to bring this in because the governor has tied this issue to the DREAM Act, which has to deal with immigrants. And I was just wondering, do you think that's unfair? Do you think that...
We think that's very unfair because when he told us publicly that he supports you know, the EITC, he did not tie it into the DREAM Act. We do not oppose the DREAM Act. And in truth, the DREAM Act is $27 million, which is not even a rounding error in a $140 billion budget.
Right.
So it's certainly not a question of money. But there are people that have ideological issues against it, because it's not against for immigrants, it's for illegal immigrants.
Right.
So there are people that say, my child is going to college, and he's got to borrow money, or I got to give him money.
Okay.
And he's not getting this help. Why are you giving it to illegal immigrants?
Right.
We do not oppose that.
So given that this is tied to the DREAM Act, do you think that the governor will then untie it at the end of the day, or do you think that this is going to just go away and fail? And
that is the biggest issue here, and that's what we were pushing today.
What?
The idea of uncoupling it and passing each one on its own merits. And leave us, you know, let us have our EITC.
And what was the reaction when you said that? They just listened?
They listen, right. And it's about, this is part of it. And one of the main things is when you do come up is you show, and when you bring up 60 people to Albany, you're really representing a minimum of 60,000 people.
Right.
Because everybody took the day off, everybody, you know, whether they drove or took the train, you know, actually spend some money. If you're a lawyer, you can't bill. If you have a job, you may not get paid. You might have to take a personal day. So you do represent a lot of people. And it's about showing that we care about it, we care about it deeply, and we don't expect that from one mission to Albany that suddenly everything, the ITC is one of the issues that we had. You know, we had a whole bunch of issues. They're not all, you know, they're not going to be resolved on today's day.
Right. I need to, you know, sort of ask you a few other topics and issues, and because we have, you know,
limited time. I know that I run into that problem all the time.
The new speaker, Carl Hasty, he paid a visit to Borough Park.
Right.
And I was just wondering if, when you met with him today, if he was sort of saying it doesn't have to be tied to the DREAM Act, if the EITC could stand on its own. What was his feeling? Did he embrace?
He's very new to the job.
Yes,
but
he's not new to the issue.
He's not new to the issue. And prior to becoming speaker, he actually endorsed it. He was a sponsor on the bill for the ITC, a co-sponsor on the bill. Right. He actually was a co-sponsor on the bill. And he took his name off of everything because, you know, which was right as a speaker. He didn't want to prejudice any bills. But he actually was a co-sponsor. But now he has a Democratic conference that he has to deal with. So not everything that he backed personally will he be able to back as
Do the
speaker.
Republicans back this?
Yes, very strongly.
Wholehearted. You should have seen them when you were there today at the Senate Senate Majority Leader Dean Scalos. It was the Senate Democrat Conference leader, independent
IDC leader.
The IDC leader, Independent Democratic Conference leader Jeff Klein, Diane Savino, and Senator Carlucci from Rockland County.
Flanagan, Chairman of Education.
And Flanagan was there. I mean, and Simcha Felder was there, Senator Simcha. I mean, they were just eating this up. I mean, they were. You were preaching to the converted. I hate to say it.
You have to appreciate.
Well, you have to, even though you know that they're on your side, you still have to pay respects. You still have to
don't take it for
encourage
granted.
them,
Yes,
and don't take it for
You
granted.
have to appreciate the audience.
So
The audience should appreciate.
Are you happy with the new speaker?
It's too early to say.
Jury's out.
Jury's out.
He seemed very receptive. We had met with him on Sunday. He had come to Borough Park at an event that Assemblyman Hyken had held for him.
Right.
Leon spoke, I spoke.
Oh, good.
We educated him on some of the issues. And since Sunday,
Some
today's
Yiddish
Wednesday,
words.
Yeah.
and he came back and said, I did read up and I did look into some of the issues that you brought up. We were impressed with that. And the jury is out. And Leon said it exactly right. The people really, I don't think, appreciate the job that Shelley Silver did managing his conference over the last number of years. It's a very diverse conference, several members from different parts of the community, liberals, far left liberals, centrists, moderates. It's a very
Conservative
dynamic,
Democrats,
it's a very dynamic,
very
broad coalition that the speaker kept together, Shelley Silver.
Okay.
I would like to make mention to something that was said before. Somebody who has been coming up to these missions for a couple of years together with us, a journalist, mentioned to me right before we came here. He says, this is the first year that he actually saw the wheels that had been set in motion over the last year or two starting to pay off dividends. There was acknowledgement by the Senate, there was an acknowledgement by the governor's staff that things that we had been working on for the past number of years, whether the transportation issues, special ed issues, TAP for rabbinical student issues, we've had success. Our community has had success in the legislative arena. And so the education tax credit now is front and center, but it didn't start today. We've been advocating for this for quite a while.
And that was Yochanan who said that to you?
That was the journalist who told that to me.
So I wanted to...
A few more minutes, Mark.
Yes. Wanted to bring up the issue of circumcision. There was a compromise.
There was a compromise. The compromise was working in Rockland County, and basically the compromise is very simple, because we claim that it's not the child were not getting sick from Mitzitz B'Peh. In Rockland County, what they instituted about 2 years ago, together with the community, and that's what's going to happen here, is that if there's a case, God forbid, of a child getting sick, you have to do a DNA test on the mold.
And can you explain the process and procedure briefly?
Of taking the test, or of
no?
Mitzitz B'Peh is something that goes back to ancient times. In other words, the idea of drawing the blood away from the circumcision. So many in the Hasidic communities and in various different Orthodox communities, the male will do oral suction. In other communities, they use a pipette instead.
A straw?
Well, that's a pipette,
okay.
Same idea, and use that instead. But we believe that it's an integral part, and my family does too. I come from a Hasidic background. It's an integral part of the milah, and that you can't use a pipette. But if the male is found, God forbid, to have caused it because his DNA is now matching with the child's, with the disease, he is for the rest of his life not allowed to do a circumcision.
And that's what the agreement is.
No, I think
But you could do the procedure. You just
I'm not sure. It's not
Okay,
clear.
fine.
But this is only New York City now? It's not New York State? It's
No,
New
no,
York
no.
State?
This is New York City, strictly New York City.
Oh, really?
Because they're the only ones. This was a city issue, and so that really takes care of our problems. Because if you're right, and there is a male, a circumciser that is infecting children, we want them out too.
So Rockland County doesn't get an impact by this?
Rockland County had its own program,
Okay, and
they
Nassau
have
County
never.
doesn't?
No, not only that, but Rockland County. So for a year and a half, there's never been a match.
Yeah.
There's never
But
been a
there's
match.
been
There have been sick children that
sick
have gotten
children, but
herpes,
never a match.
and there's never been a match,
It must
which
be
proves.
stated for the record, there is a misnomer for anybody to accuse the Orthodox Jewish community of all communities that they don't care about children and we're not concerned about the safety of our children, it's an absolute lie.
And this is what we've asked for the last number of years, institute the Rockland program.
All right, well,
We're ready with that.
Well, we need to have you back on the show.
Running out of time. Thank you very much for the representatives of Agudath. You're doing good work over here in New York City, and I'm glad to have you in New Albany if
And
we can help
nationwide.
for anything. And the
And
whole
nationwide,
nation.
we have 8 offices throughout the country. We have representatives going to, I think, 26 states.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
here.
being on.
Appreciate
Doing
it.
good work.
Much success.
Okay.